Returning now to our top story, and Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 80 Palestinians in Gaza since a ceasefire deal was announced 2 days ago. The deal is expected to come into effect on Sunday, but internal Israeli politics appear to be delaying a confirmation vote. For more, we're joined by Walkley-winning author of The Palestine Laboratory, Antony Loewenstein. Antony, thanks for joining us. Now, Israel's National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, has threatened to resign if the government ratifies the deal, saying it's reckless and erases the achievements of war. He also wants a complete stop to humanitarian aid from getting into Gaza. What insight does that give into the decisions made over the last 15 months?
I mean, Ben-Gvir himself, in fact, said that in the last few days that he and his party, which is a far-right extremist religious party, has openly blocked various hostage deals that Netanyahu as Prime Minister could have made with Hamas. Now, the fact that that is something that he's openly admitting, which we all knew, but he admitted it publicly a few days ago, speaks volumes. The deal that is on the table that appears to be being taken now by Israel and Hamas, brokered by Qatar and others, is basically exactly the same as a deal that was on the table 8 months ago. And in the last months, there has been a clear indication in Gaza that there's no military objective to continue pounding and killing huge amounts of Palestinians, which is what Israel continues to do to this day. So Ben-Gvir's presence within the government that Netanyahu's been happy to have, frankly, to maintain a coalition, has made it impossible to have a hostage deal. So what does that say about how Israel views its own hostages who have been in captivity now for 15 months?
Antony, the US negotiated the deal and is confident the ceasefire will start on Sunday. Is it hypocritical for the US to have brokered this deal when they're the ones supplying the most weapons to Israel?
I mean, the short answer is yes. And in fact, just this week, ProPublica, which is a great US outlet, had a report that detailed in depth how the State Department, led by Antony Blinken, but obviously Joe Biden as president, had notably for months and months deliberately not stopped weapons going to Israel, despite the fact that their own staff knew that Israel was committing grievous human rights abuses and starvation on the Palestinian people. The US knew. The US has always known this policy. So you're absolutely right. The US provides massive amounts of weapons and money to Israel, which continues, which won't change much under Trump, of course. But Biden is deeply complicit in what's going on, as is Antony Blinken. So it's hypocritical, it seems, from my understanding, that Trump and the people around him put pressure on Netanyahu to make some deal. And, of course, the sweeteners that may have been part of that to Israel, possibly expanding West Bank settlements even more, and various other things, maybe even restarting the war in Gaza if Israel doesn't like that, which, of course, they're breaking ceasefire agreements in Lebanon every day as we speak, really is a concern because Palestinians in Gaza are the ones who've been suffering the most for 15 months.
Yeah, the ceasefire deal doesn't include the West Bank, and Trump's pick for Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, says he'll lift the sanctions against violent Israeli settlers. What could that unleash?
One of the things that the Biden administration has done positively, and it's not many, was put sanctions on some far-right extremist Jewish settlers in the West Bank. By lifting those sanctions, what essentially the US is saying is that it's okay to kill and maim and attack Palestinians. The upsurge in violence in the West Bank in the last 15 months, which was already terrible before October 7, has exploded. In fact, I was just in the West Bank a few months ago looking into this. And the impact of that day to day is Palestinians, roughly 3 million of them, cannot have freedom of movement, often can't leave their own villages, their own cities, their own towns. So the Trump administration lifting a very minimal amount of US sanction is devastating. And many of us fear that what Israel has been doing in Gaza for the last 15 months, essentially committing genocide, but also leveling the place, is actually what Israel wants to do in the West Bank as well, to make life utterly unlivable. And unless there is real tangible pressure and sanctions on those behind that, government ministers or accountability, and we still haven't had any serious attempt by international actors to arrest Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, the former Israeli defense minister, who is wanted for war crimes and genocide by the International Criminal Court as we speak.
Antony, in his final address yesterday, Joe Biden warned an oligarchy is threatening democracy and freedom. What happens in this conflict under a Trump presidency?
I mean, it's a bit ironic, frankly, that the Biden administration and the Democratic Party that are infested by oligarchs and the richest people imaginable who funded Kamala Harris's campaign. I mean, the fact that it's a bit calling kettle black. But look, ultimately, the US increasingly, arguably, is a kleptocracy rather than oligarchy, meaning that you have the Elon Musks and the Mark Zuckerbergs and others who just have insane amounts of influence and power. And that's not going to change. In fact, when Trump has spoken for years about draining the swamp is within power. The swamp is being appointed by the Trump administration as we speak. Huge amounts of the key people around Trump are the people that he himself allegedly complains about with the swamp, and Biden has almost allowed that. So I'm really concerned that the US, in fact, is heading more into a situation not that different, in fact, for Russia. Russia is not a democracy, of course, but Russia is a kleptocracy. A handful of incredibly rich people control every aspect of life, of course, with Putin's support. The US is not that different in that reality, and that is deeply concerning for America as a supposed beacon to the world.
Thank you so much for joining us, Antony Loewenstein there.
Thank you.